Everybody is here already, and so I think we should get started. Um, Welcome to Hear the Solitary Plover. My name's Amy Lutsky, and I am an editor of the Plover, along with Peggy Turnbull. For those who may not know, the Solitary Plover is a publication of the Friends of Lorene Niedecker, and this organization is dedicated to preserving and expanding the legacy of Niedecker, who is a preeminent Wisconsin 20th century poet. The Friends organization is a nonprofit managed entirely by volunteers and funded by contributions. If you would like to support our work, you can donate online at the loreneniedecker.org website. And I have placed a link to our donation page in the chat of this Zoom meeting. I want to thank tonight Michael Wendt of Woodland Pattern Book Center in Milwaukee for managing the Zoom technology for us. We will hopefully have a recording of this reading that we can share with you afterwards. So thank you, Michael, for doing that for us. The print edition of the Plover has been printed and will soon go in the mail. They're putting the stickers and the stamps on it, so it should go out pretty soon. And so all of the poets should keep an eye out for that to appear in your mailbox shortly. All of the poets who were published in the summer issue of the Solitary Plover were invited to read their work that is published there, as well as a Niedecker poem if they wish. That's not mandatory. And we understand that more than one poet may select the same poem, but we think that hearing them from different readers can enhance our experience of the poem. And so we don't ask people to sign up or tell us which poem they're going to read in advance. For the poets that cannot be with us this evening, myself and Dot, the moderator, will take turns reading their work. Before we get started, and Michael, you might be managing this for us anyway, I'm not really sure, but ask that all attendees turn off their video so that only the poets can be seen, and also remain muted through the reading. We are recording the chat as well, so feel free to leave comments there. Joining me this evening as the moderator of this reading is Dot Kent, who I mentioned. Dot has been a longtime friend of Niedecker. She has served on our board of directors and helped to run the poetry festivals in the past. So thank you, Dot, for joining us this evening. And I will turn this part of Hear the Solitary Plover over to you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Mike and Woodland Pattern. And on behalf of the Friends of Lorene Niedecker, I am really happy to have this chance to hear from all of you wonderful poets. I'm going to read the bios that we have from the Solitary Plover. And if I do make a mistake on pronouncing your name, please do correct that. And if you choose to read a Lorene Niedecker poem, just go ahead and do that when it's your turn to read. So our first poet, these are going to be alphabetical. So it's Sue Blaustein, who retired from the Milwaukee Health Department in 2016. She published her first book, In the Field, Autobiography of an Inspector, in 2018, and a chapbook, The Beer Line, in 2022. She blogs for Milwaukee's Ex-Fabula and serves as an interviewer writer for the Veterans Administration My Life, My Story program. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you. Okay, well, the poem I wrote is called Mid-May. On tree-lined blocks, there's an outline for every absent car. Every space at the curb is stenciled in pollen. When the throb between my eyes makes me yield to almost everything, I sit in the chair with torn cup holder mesh on the porch we failed to stain and watch sparrows gleaning seeds under the empty feeder. So that's my poem. For the Niedecker poem, I went into my own copy of the Granite Pail, and I'm going to read what I think is a poem. I realize it's hard to know where one poem starts and the other ends, but this excerpt, I married in the world's black night for warmth, if not repose, at the close, someone. I hid with him from the long-range guns. We lay, leg in the cupboard, head in closet, a slit of light at no bird dawn. Untaught, I thought he drank too much. I say I married and lived unburied. I thought. Your erudition, the elegant flower of which my blue chicory at the scrub end of campus ditch illuminates. Thank you. That's my poem there.
Thank you. I'm looking on here to see if Patricia Carney is here. Are you here, Patricia?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Thank you. So Patricia lives and writes along the shores of Lake Michigan, taking mystic cues from the muse of the lake. Her poems are published throughout the Midwest, including her latest chapbook, A Kayak is My Church Pew, Kelsey Press 2021. Memberships include the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets and South Shore Poets.
Thank you. My poem is titled Mesmerized. Kayaking shallows by first light of dawn. A dragonfly hovers over the bow. Metallic green darner dazzles in sunlight. A Bambi born in the night lies hidden from inland reach on shoreline ledge, camouflaged in the dappled light of the overhanging pine bough. In still water, kayak slips along shore. Turtlehead pokes through surface, forming rings of an echoing breath. In mesmerizing magic, the dawn breaks. A soft breeze mixes night into fullness of day. The poem I selected from Niedecker's collected works. It's under the chapter works from 1957 through 59, and there's a heading march with two either stanzas or two paragraphs under that title. So they're very short. I'll read both of them. I'm not sure they were intended to be two stanzas or two separate poems. March. Bird feeders, snow cap, sliding off. Something in the water, like a flower, will devour. Water, flower. Thank you for allowing me to read.
Thank you, Pat. Our next poet is Daphne Dougherty. She's a Milwaukee-based poet and PhD candidate at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Her poetry is heavily influenced by the landscapes and people of the Midwest.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I will be reading my poem called Restless Motion and Ceaseless Change. I will not be reading a Niedecker poem because I don't tend to like to read other people's works out loud, but it's lovely to hear other people do it. But I will just be reading mine today. So Restless Motion and Ceaseless Change. Everything ebbs and everything ice flows like glaciers here in the driftless prairie. Gray gold grass, flat like flooded marshland. They say someone saw a coyote this morning. They say painted turtles live in the garden. They say there's a bald eagle in the enclosure. And maybe all this together is a time machine. Maybe we can go back to when all this land was covered in ice and nothing ever changed except the unending creep of green water glass, frozen marshland that grinds the boulders into sand. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne. Our next poet is Donna Fleischer, and Amy Lutsky will be reading this one for us. Donna Fleischer is the author of 7 poetry books, 2 newly released titles among these, 25 Haiben called Flaneur, and 40 haiku titled Everyday Earth from Longhouse Publishers in Vermont. Her poems are in over 70 journals and anthologies worldwide, including A Vast Sky, EOAGH, Co., The Fortnightly Review, and The Solitary Plover.
And Donna's poem is titled To Find Food. Is it love, then, that answers best if one could feel, receive? I.e., not interrupt the signal, the look, not to fight fear, but to see love change the view.
Thank you, Amy. Our next poet is Ronnie Hess. She is a poet and essayist, the author of 7 poetry collections, including her most recent Ekphrasis, Word Poetry 2023, about raising hens in her backyard. She lives in Madison. Her grandparents were deported to Treblinka in 1942. She and her sister laid Stolperstein for them in March 2024.
Hi. Forgive me for pronouncing the word somewhat differently from you. The poem is called Stolpersteine, which means stumbling stones in German. And these are concrete blocks laid in front of the last voluntarily chosen place of residence of victims of Nazi persecution from 1933 to 45. And the stones are the project of German artist Gunter Demnig. So
Thank you, Ronnie.
You're welcome. So here's my poem, Stolpersteine. Measured for memory, 2 small cement slabs with brass plaques inserted into Berlin's cobblestone streets. Her name, his, constants in history, what happened to them inscribed. The neighborhood, not the same, most houses, synagogues bombed, gone now. Here now, modern apartment complexes, new high school along the Spree River, where perhaps he fished and she cooked what he brought home. So, as a Loreen poem, this is from North Central. And it starts with the word stone. Stone and that hard contact, the human, on the massed quartz on which spruce grew dense. I met him, we were thick, we said goodbye on the passing years river. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ronnie. The next poem I will be reading. With her retirement from teaching and the pandemic coinciding, Angela Hoffman took to writing poetry. Her poetry has been widely published. Angela's collections include Hold the Contraries, Ollie Ollie Oxenfree, nominated for the Eric Hoffer Book Award, and Resurrection Lily from Kelsey Books. She lives in Wisconsin. I want to remember by Angela Hoffman. I want to remember the two lone tulips with their pink folds so soft, leaning into each other, cheek to cheek. When I looked this morning, they were gone, nibbled down to the ground. Our next poem is by Gary Hotham, who currently lives in Maryland. He has had a number of chapbooks of haiku published since his first, Without the Mountains, in 1976. Mannequins Dressed for the Window, Haiku Secrets, received an honorable mention in the Haiku Canada Marianne Bluger Book and Chapbook Awards for 2022. And Right Sizing the Universe, Haiku Theory, received an honorable mention in the Touchstone Distinguished Book Awards for 2019. His most recent chapbook, Soft Serve, Haiku Remains, was published in 2023 by Pinion Publishing.
Hello, good evening.
So,
I'll read my two haiku. Home, what the wind leaves behind. New snow, footprints taking over. And the Niedecker poem is on page 96 of her collected works. Remember my little granite pail. The handle of it was blue. Think what's got away in my life was enough to carry me through. Thank you.
thank you. Our next poet, Kelly M. Houle, is an Arizona-based writer, educator, and visual artist whose poetry has been published in Calyx, Crab Orchard Review, Kenyon Review, Radar Poetry, Red Rock Review, Sequestrum, and others. She teaches mathematics and guides a nature sketchbook club for middle school and high school students. He writes with Pictura Poesis on Substack.
Thank you. And you got my name right.
Thank you.
I'll read my poem Coral. And I'm glad I get to read it out loud because it's a play on the sound of the title. Coral. In florid keys to the south, swaying corals, once fluorescent, have changed their song, as if baton to stand has called for, in gray unison, the first slow measured exhale of the sanctus. Unable to graze, the new wild parrotfish, sea turtles, urchins, stars, all hear the ocean's grave, new hymn, O motherless child. And the Niedecker poem I chose was Darwin. I won't read the whole thing because it's a long poem. It's on 195 of her collected works. I'll just read the first section because I think it's the best Charles Darwin poem ever. Darwin, one, his holy, slowly mulled over matter, not all delirium of delight, as were the forests of Brazil. Species are not, it is like confessing a murder, immutable. He was often becalmed in this port desire by illness or wrested from species at billiard table. As to man, I believe man in the same predicament with other animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Lutsky will be reading our next poem by Jeffrey Johannes, who co-edited the 2012 Wisconsin Poets Calendar and the 2019 winter issue of Bramble. He's been nominated for a Pushcart Prize, won the Hal Prize from Peninsula Pulse, and won and placed in triad contests from the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets. He lives in Port Edwards, Wisconsin.
And Jeffrey's poem is titled Nocturne, July. I wonder if the cool and distant moon closed its eyes as the flash lit up New Mexico, searing it incandescent with a million suns, and the mushroom cloud roiled into the sky. These images disturb me, but I am calm by a summer breeze and fireflies blinking as they will.
Thank you. I'll be reading this next poem. Joan Weiss Johannes's fifth poetry collection, Lamenting My Failure to Learn How to Tap Dance, was released in 2023 by Water's Edge Press. He has won contests sponsored by the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets and the Midwest Writing Center, and co-edited the 2012 Wisconsin Poets Calendar with her poet husband, Jeffrey. The Chinese would say this is the beginning of an auspicious day, by Joan Weiss Johannes. The fish splashing disturbs the surface of the pond and distorts reflections of trees I cannot name. I could call them beech or oak, but detail is not as important as truth when the new sun illuminates water lilies and each yellow bud pushes against a cage of rigid leaves. A large bird purposefully flies toward me. When it is almost overhead, I see its coloration and recognize an osprey. With steadiness of wing beat and glide, it disappears behind the trees and enters this new day. I was born at dawn. Our next poet is Paul Klinger, who studied poetry in the MFA program at the University of Arizona, where he first encountered Lorene Niedecker's work. His books include Mouthpiece, LRL Textile Series 2015, and Rubble Paper, Paper Rubble, from Further Other Book Works 2013. Klinger lives in Houston, Texas, and works at the University of Houston Law Center.
Thank you. I'm reading my poem, Extinct Corners. Spare time as a way to pass counting decoys before carrying them in a canvas duffel and dumping them into the boat. What is that note of wooden ducks dropping into a skiff under heavy cloth? What marsh sound is dogs and guns to reason, a stand in murky water, not to watch birds, but to move oneself through cold-ass morning? The Niedecker poem I wanted to read is from New Goose. It's on page 107 of her collected works. In italics above the poem says Audubon. Tried selling my pictures, in jail twice for debt, my companion a sharp frosty gale. In England unpacked them with fear. Must I migrate back to the woods unknown, strange to all but the birds I paint? Dear Lucy, the servants here move quiet as killdeer. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I didn't recognize that one. Our next poet is John Levy. John Levy's most recent book is 54 Poems, Selected and New, from Shearsman Books 2024. His most recent chapbook of poems is Guest Book for People in My Dreams, from Proper Tales Press 2024. He lives in Tucson.
My poem is titled LN. Let's see here. LN. Deciduous trees lose leaves, while decisions Lorene Niedecker made about which words to save in poems continue to hold on, monogamous, all up and down their length. And the Niedecker poem that I've chosen is in North Central in the section called Traces of Living Things. I walked on New Year's Day beside the trees my father now gone planted, evenly following the road. Each spoke peace.
Thank you. I'll be reading this next poem from Scott Lowery's recent chapbook, Mutual Life, spotlights everyday life against the backdrop of our tumultuous times. Recent poems are in Bramble, Oakwood, Canary, and Wisconsin Poets Calendar. After 30 years in rural southeastern Minnesota, Lowery and his wife now live near their young grandchildren in Milwaukee. On Days When Writing Time is Limited, by Scott Lowery. I should remember this feeling, the smallest daub against blank surface, how it can be start and middle and finish by itself. Bee buzz motor idling in the big world's curb, rough sketch, tower of sand at water's edge, the step in and launch on the mere surface of morning. Goodbye for now. Our next poet, Crystal Maas, lives in southeastern Wisconsin. She enjoys gardening, hiking, and exploring her beautiful home state, which last summer included pedaling her old bicycle on many of Wisconsin's rail trails. Her nature-inspired poetry appears in numerous publications.
And Crystal's poem is titled Directions. How could I lose my way in this summer meadow while compass plants stand tall, blaze sunny yellow amid mountain mint, bergamot, and rattlesnake master, pointing directions to butterflies skipping about and to the fawn at the edge of the distant wood?
Thank you, Amy. Our next poet, Elizabeth Harmatus Park, is the Racine Poet Laureate who writes with Authors Echo in Burlington, Wisconsin. Elizabeth received the Jade Ring First Place Prize in Poetry and the New Feathers 2020 Award. Her poetry is found in journals, anthologies, 3 chapbooks, and the Wisconsin Poets Calendar.
Dot, we did not hear from Elizabeth about whether or not she could attend tonight, so I will happily read her poem for her.
Wonderful, thank you.
Her poem is titled Sparse. Margarine, a few slices of bologna, a small pitcher of milk in the fridge, tape measure, safety pins, ruler, 1 pair of scissors in the drawer, an ashtray, plastic drink coasters, newspaper on the coffee table, worn white towel in the bathroom, another in the laundry basket. Sears plaid cotton bedspread, thin sheets and blanket on the bed, oil can, lawnmower, stepladder, shovel, and rake in the garage. Single tulips spaced far apart line the concrete driveway. I might be exaggerating, but not by much. I was there.
Thank you, Amy. I'll be reading this next poem from Georgia Ressmeyer, a 3-time Pushcart Prize nominee. She's the author of 2 published poetry chapbooks, and 2 full-length poetry collections. Her most recent is Leading a Life from Water's Edge Press. Others include Today I Threw My Watch Away from Finishing Line Press, Waiting to Sail, Black River Press, and Home/Body, Pebble Book Press. Her poetry has won numerous awards. No fooling around. In an up or down vote, rain chose down, no fooling around. No feats of gymnastics, delay tactics, adolescent theatrics. A mature sort of rain, boon to the grass, ground, roots. Rain meters are pleased, nothing is wasted, no one drowned. Now everything gleams with the sheen of precipitate sun. Our next poet is Daisy Claire Rosenstock, who lives in Boise, Idaho, where she completed her MFA in creative writing. When not writing hazy and macabre poetry, she can be found exploring abandoned houses or chatting with the local dying pine tree.
And I am going to read Daisy's poem as well, as she wasn't able to attend this evening. Submerge this mouth, brimming with dog rows, dirt in the trap, becoming fossilized cave, hymning teeth wet, piled deer bones, country pines half sliced, fisting what's left of muscle, watching someone's own iris grow, kissing the membrane's cheeks, bound on the backs, between knees, Flora Fields, doing laundry underneath the shed at the edge of the swing set, but the dryer stands static, coming down the tree. And when all is said and done, Earth's mouth opens, still around, mosquitoes gathering down.
Thank you, Amy. Our next poet, Carrie Voigt Schoenhoff, poet and author of The Liminal Space and the End of the Beginning, captures the spirit of her native Wisconsin while encapsulating the growth of her life's journey and exciting next chapter. Her work will pull at the heartstrings of those that continue to face challenges but never stop dreaming. Carrie is currently working on her 3rd poetry book and looks forward to sharing her poems with the world through upcoming residency programs, book signing events, and festivals.
Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to read my poem, The Kindertransport, in honor of Sir Nicholas Winton. She clawed the garden bed, seeded rows of glory, covered them with chapped hands and forearms that were only marked with mud, not numbers. She prayed her knees would lift as they had for 98 years. As she posed the wild bouquet in a crystal check vase, the hark of a nearby train sent heat to her ancient limbs, provoking memories locked in her cells. Mama made the smock she wore on the transport to a temporary, then permanent family. Remembering the curdled air from so many children packed with fear still made her gasp. There was the promise of reunion in the eyes of her father standing on the platform. She stretched for him at the window's edge, but her arms would never be long enough. Welcomed back to her farm by the whistle of tea on the warm summer day, she looked down at her fists and conceded a silent victory. And I would like to read a short Lorene poem. It's the first one that I ever learned about, and it just made me fall in love with her poetry. It's called My Friend Tree. My friend Tree, I saw you down, but I must attend an older friend, the sun.
Thank you. Margaret Schroeder is a nature lover who lives in Fort Atkinson. She is devoted to supporting pollinators upon whom we rely for food. She participates in a local study group dedicated to bringing Lorene Niedecker's work to life. Margaret is retired from a career in mental health.
Can't hear you, Margaret.
Dot, is Margaret reading through your Zoom thing? Because we can't hear anything.
Quick scenery change. I love it.
Cranes, gurgling matchsticks, origami in flight, paint mandalas in the sky, hope primordial. And my Niedecker poem is called When Ecstasy is Inconvenient. Feign a great calm. All gay transport soon ends. Chant, who knows? Flight's end or flight's beginning for the resting gull? Heart, be still. Say there is money, but it rusted. Say the time of moon is not right for escape. It's the color in the lower sky, too broadly suffused, or the wind in my tie. Know amazingly how often one takes his madness into his own hands and keeps it. Thank you.
All righty. Thanks, Margaret. Dan Schweren's poetry comes from life on a farm or making his rounds across 30 plus years as a pastor in Wisconsin, and now as the bishop of the Northern Illinois Conference of the United Methodist Church. His debut haiku collection, ORS, from Red Moon Press, won the Haiku Foundation's Touchstone Award in 2016. You can find him on Twitter at SchwerenDan.
Thank you. Two brief poems. Honestly, how other trees gossip about the rain comes to nothing. Trees made honest by the breeze have less malice to confess. Be here lightly, even kindly. There is mud too in your nest. And down the road. Down the road, a smooth hardness is also the shore of my life by water, this full and stony correspondence of winter stars. And Gary Hotham read my Lorene poem, so I'll pick another from New Goose. See the girls in shorts on their bicycles right here in Janesville. And why? No modesty anymore. All gone by. Thank you.
Thank you. And Julie Schwerin is an associate editor at The Heron's Nest, author of Walking Away from the Sunset by Brooks Books, What Was Here, Folded Word Press, and Still Growing Wings, forthcoming from Backbone Press.
Thank you. I'm going to read two short, untitled poems. A murmuration of starlings drift, shift, slip, liquid into the slow flow night sky and dry. And a haiku. Swapping what happened to the farm stories, old free-range kids. My Lorraine poem is from North Central. I'm sorry to have missed Sand Lake. My dear one tells me we did not. We watched a gopher there. Thank you.
Thank you. Katrina Suri loves poems of place. Her current project is foraging poems on Wisconsin's Ice Age Trail. Her poetry has been featured in publications such as Bramble, Portage Magazine, Squirrel Place, Moss Piglet, and the Blue Heron Review. You can follow her journey at katrinasuri.com.
Hepatica stars on the backs of hummocky hills, folding over and into each other, we push through yesterday's dry leaves to seek our time in the sun, cast our yellow-centered stars across a palette of brown as we open our centers to warmth, stretch skyward, propagate our creativity in shades of lavender, violet, plum, galaxy blue, our time to bloom long as an April day before the rush of spring is over and we are consumed by tomorrow's green tide. And I will read an excerpt of a poem from the Granite Pail. From peon to place, and the place was water. I was the solitary plover, a pencil for a wing bone. From the secret notes, I must tilt upon the pressure, execute and adjust in us sea-air rhythm. We live by the urgent wave of the verse. Thank you.
Thank you. Rhett Watts lives by a brook in Massachusetts with her husband and Siberian cat. She is the author of the poetry books Willing Suspension and The Braiding, and coming in 2025, The Double Nest. Her chapbook, No Innocent Eye, won the Rain Arroyo Chapbook Award. Rhett facilitates writing workshops.
We did not get a reply from Rhett either. So if you want, I can read that poem as soon as I find it. All right, so Rhett's poem is titled Cold Snap. Before the storm, before I shoot, mist rises off the creek in our backyard, ice dams crackling. Chickadees swoop limb to limb like socks wheeled out on clothesline, hung slack between hemlocks. The temperature drops, ice crystals grow a skin, link the stream banks. My body chills. Lens focuses, sensor gathers rays. The photograph writes with light, shutter quick as wings.
Thank you. Well, I know Mary's here. Mary Weiner is a painter and poet who lives on the waters of Lake Winnebago in Fond du Lac and cherishes the company of birds and nature in her environments.
Thank you very much. My poem is titled Timeless Tree. Long, linear, storm-scarred, stubborn, deep-rooted, and tough, a weighty trunk gnarled in stories, decades of birdsong and wild leaf chatter. Old budding mentor bows to my shaky eye as I too slowly bend and stretch my bony fingers down the calendar, marking this windy spring day. And the Niedecker poem I am going to read is from her collected works, and it's just a little short one. I can't help but think of her and where she lived. And Sundays, motor cars jar the house. When I'm away on work days, I hear the rose breast. Love the night, and if on waking it rains, little drops of rest. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Dillon Welsh has enjoyed short poetry since his childhood, soon discovering Lorene Niedecker's poetry. He directs the Seebeck Haiku Getaway and Haiku North America conferences and founded National Haiku Writing Month and the Tanka Society of America. Michael's website, graceguts.com, documents his poetry life.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to share poetry with each other. I'm going to be reading a piece called Hunger. It's a solo renge. The renge form is derived from the Japanese sequence of haiku called renga. Renge is deliberately limited to 6 verses instead of many more verses, and focuses on a single theme, which a traditional renga does not do. And it's usually meant to be a collaborative form with 2 or 3 or 6 writers. This is a solo renge, and it's in honor of my mother who passed away a year ago in April. Hunger. Funeral day. Yet another overcast sky. My shirt too tight at the collar. Rain at the window. Eulogy notes folded in my pocket. Daffodils on the dais. I join my siblings in the front row. The pastor's singing, a little off-key. Hunger pangs. Benediction doesn't mention mother. And as a person who's a fan of haiku, I am drawn to Green Niedecker's In Exchange for Haiku, and the 20 or so poems she has in that form, or her form of haiku. There are 5 lines, and the 3rd and 4th lines have a rhyme or slant rhyme. Poems average fewer than 17 syllables. But what's interesting is that she also used the same pattern as in stanzas for longer poems, including her Peon to Place, and the Niedecker poem I'd like to read is one of those stanzas, the opening stanza of that longer piece. And all of the stanzas follow the same form. And if you look it up in your Niedecker Bible, it's page 261. Fish, fowl, flood, water lily, mud, my life. And I think that was true of her life, the place where she lived. Fish, fowl, flood, water lily, mud, my life. Thank you.
And our final poet is ex-finance director Stan Winarski of Germantown, Wisconsin, who finally escaped the world of formulas and cash flow projections in 2022, trading them for the deepening joy of writing poetry. His greatest sources of inspiration are nature, late night worrying, and simple acts of living. When not reading or writing, Stan and wife Mary Kay enjoy their newfound freedom, camping and traveling.
Thank you, editors, for selecting my poem and for this opportunity to read in front of others. I'm going to be reading a poem called Simple Acts. The party is tomorrow, and my slacks need ironing. The crease has gone soft like the body that will wear them. I could wear them as they are. I could have sent them out. I chose to iron them myself, ironing them not out of vanity, but out of respect for them as a symbol of mine. My fingers fixed the crease, then felt the singe of the irons already. There was a calming rhythm pressing back and forth, watching wrinkles melt away. There's a pleasurable scent of hot on cotton in the air, the slacks, my fingers. There is satisfaction in the simplicity of this act, in the accomplishment from repetition, in the awareness that important things are made of things less so. And I am truly excited to read the poem that I selected for tonight, because being a W, normally one has to go second, third, fourth, sixth choices, because other people often pick your first and earlier choices. And I think it's appropriate for this evening. It's called Poet's Work. Grandfather advised me, learn a trade. I learned to sit at a desk and condense. No layoffs from this condensery. Thank you.
That's a perfect way to end. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Amy. And I really appreciate being invited to moderate this and to hear all your wonderful poetry.
Thank you, Dot. We appreciate your help. Thank you, Michael, for being our technical support person. And we will share the link to the recording. I'll send it out to all of the poets, and it will be on the LorraineNiedecker.org website. So look for it there. Thank you again to all of the poets. You are what makes the Solitary Plover special. And the reading is such a wonderful way to get to put faces to each of you, and also to hear how you present that work to us. I really appreciate everyone's participation in this event. And one little note, Elizabeth Park was not able to be with us today because Ronnie has shared her obituary. She passed away in May, and I am I'm saddened by that. She was a regular contributor, but I'm also honored to know that she found the Solitary Plover worthy of her submissions, and glad that we got to know her. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Amy.